That sound is the high-altitude turboprop drone of an unmarked Beechcraft King Air 300, flying a deliberate orbit pattern over the city of Medellin, Colombia, at 24,000 feet on a December night in 1993. The aircraft was officially American. It carried no markings, no flags, no national insignia. It flew under no flight plan filed with any civilian air traffic authority. It was a top-secret, special access U.S. Army signals intelligence platform. The men inside that aircraft were hunting a single human being. His name was Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. He was, by some estimates, the wealthiest criminal in human history, with a personal fortune of $30 billion. He controlled the Medellin Cartel, which at its peak supplied 80% of all cocaine entering the United States. He had bought the loyalty of senior officers in the Colombian National Police, the Colombian Army, the Colombian Judiciary, the Colombian Congress, and the Colombian Catholic Church. He had ordered the assassination of presidential candidates, the bombing of an Avianca passenger jet over Bogotá, and the murder of more than 4,000 Colombians who had crossed him. He was, in the language of the people who hunted him, untouchable on the ground. The conventional efforts to kill or capture Escobar had failed for 2 decades. The Colombian National Police could not catch him because his lieutenants had penetrated their command structure. American Drug Enforcement Administration agents could not catch him because the moment they coordinated with Colombian counterparts, the operation leaked. American Special Operations Forces could not catch him because the moment a U.S. helicopter lifted off from a Colombian forward operating base, an Escobar lookout in the slums of Medellin radioed it forward. Escobar had one weakness. He was a micromanager. He insisted on personally directing the operations of his cartel, the cocaine shipments, the bribes, the killings, through encrypted radio and through a small set of personal Motorola brick mobile phones that he carried with him from safe house to safe house. When Escobar keyed the microphone of one of those phones, his voice and his physical location became, briefly, an electromagnetic signal radiating outward through space at the speed of light. A signal is a thing that can be detected. A signal is a thing that can be triangulated. A signal is a thing that, if you fly the right specialized aircraft above it at the right altitude with the right antennas, can be turned into a precise geographic coordinate on a map of Medellin. This is File 08, Centra Spike. Centra Spike was, in 1989, one of the most classified signals intelligence task forces in the United States military. It existed on paper as a unit of the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command. In practice, it was a small fleet of 3 modified Beechcraft King Air 300 turboprop aircraft, an even smaller cohort of military signals intelligence operators with very specialized training, and a charter, Majadisur da Mons Diko Sanitatorishanj, granted at the level of the Joint Special Operations Command, to provide airborne radio direction, finding support to Tier 1 special mission operations anywhere in the world. The Beechcraft platform was chosen for a precise set of reasons. It looked from the ground exactly like the kind of small turboprop business aircraft that flew over Latin America by the hundreds every day. It was unremarkable. It did not attract attention. It could be repainted with any civilian registration. It could land at any small regional airport without raising questions. Inside, the Beechcraft were stripped of every passenger seat. In their place, 4 hardened operator stations, each equipped with high-resolution CRT monitors, multi-band radio direction finding antennas mounted to the underbelly of the aircraft, and the full computational pipeline required to correlate radio signal data in real time with geographic position. The aircraft cabin was not pressurized. At 24,000 feet, the temperature inside the Beechcraft dropped routinely to -20 Fahrenheit. The operators wore winter parkas over their flight suits, their breath fogged in front of their CRT screens. They sat in those seats for 6 hours at a time, with no breaks, listening to silence. Escobar made phone calls only rarely. When he did, he kept them short, typically under 3 minutes. He moved between safe houses constantly. To catch him, the Centra Spike crews had to be airborne, on station, and listening at the precise moment he keyed his Motorola. For nearly 4 years, that was the work. They flew, they froze, they listened. Most flights, they heard nothing. Some flights, they caught a fragment of Escobar's voice, long enough to compute a course direction-finding vector. Never long enough to triangulate to a specific building. Each of those fragments was carefully recorded, carefully time-stamped, and carefully fed into the slow, accumulating intelligence picture of where Pablo Escobar actually was, hour by hour, in the city of Medellin. The Centra Spike operators were betting on patience. They were betting that eventually Escobar would make the wrong call from the wrong place at the wrong time. In December of 1993, he did. The technical challenge of locating Pablo Escobar was, by 1993, the most demanding airborne radio direction finding problem the U.S. Army had ever attempted. A standard direction finding fix is straightforward. A radio signal radiates outward from its source in a sphere. An antenna pointed at the signal can compute, with a few degrees of error, the bearing back to the source. 2 antennas at different locations can cross their bearings to triangulate the source's geographic position. The problem with Medellin was the Andes. Medellin sits in a deep valley surrounded on all sides by tall, steep mountain ranges. When Escobar keyed his Motorola brick phone in a safe house somewhere in that valley, his radio signal did not radiate outward in a clean sphere. The signal bounced off the surrounding mountain faces. It hit one mountain, it hit a second, it hit a third. By the time the signal arrived at the antenna of a Beechcraft flying 24,000 feet above the valley, the antenna was receiving the signal from 4 different apparent directions simultaneously, 1 true, 3 false echoes. This is the multipath problem. It is the fundamental physics of radio direction finding inside a deep valley. To solve it, Centra Spike flew its Beechcraft in tandem orbits to Beechcraft King. 2 aircraft, 10 miles apart, each computing its own signal bearing. The math being run in real time on the cabin computers to compare the relative arrival times of the 4 candidate signals at both aircraft. The signal that was internally consistent with the speed of light and the known geographic positions of both Beechcraft was the true signal. The other 3 were echoes. The math worked. The algorithm could, given approximately 90 seconds of continuous radio transmission, eliminate the multipath false echoes and resolve the true signal source to a fixed box of approximately 4 city blocks. 4 city blocks was not yet enough. 4 city blocks contained dozens of houses and hundreds of people. To send a Colombian search block team into a 4-block fix box was to risk shooting the wrong person and giving Escobar an additional hour to flee. The Centra Spike operators needed a longer call. They needed Escobar to stay on the phone long enough for the algorithm to run a second pass and tighten the fix. On December 2, 1993, Pablo Escobar made a phone call that lasted longer than any phone call he had made in 3 years. He called his son. December 2, 1993 was Pablo Escobar's birthday week. His son, Juan Pablo Escobar, had returned to Medellin from a brief, abortive attempt to seek political asylum in Germany. The German federal government had refused his asylum claim. Pablo wanted to talk to his son. He had spent the previous weeks moving between safe houses in Medellin, sleeping never more than 2 consecutive nights in any single building, traveling with a single bodyguard, conducting all communications via short scattered radio calls. On the afternoon of December 2nd, in the upstairs office of an unremarkable two-story house in the Los Olivos neighborhood, he picked up his Motorola brick phone and dialed his son's number. Centra Spike had been listening for 56 straight days. They had logged dozens of brief Escobar transmissions over that period, each lasting under 3 minutes. None had been long enough to collapse the Multipath fix box below 4 city blocks of resolution. This call, when it came, was different. It started as an ordinary father-son conversation. Pablo asked Juan Pablo about his health, about his studies, about his mother. Juan Pablo asked his father about his safety, about the political situation, about how things were going. The call lasted 6 minutes. Then Pablo asked Juan Pablo to put his mother on the line. The call continued. Pablo spoke with his wife for another 4 minutes. Then the family had a brief 3-way conversation that lasted another minute. 11 minutes. For the entire 11 minutes, the Motorola brick phone in Pablo's hand was a continuous radio transmission, radiating outward from the upstairs office of the Los Olivos house, bouncing off the surrounding Andes, arriving at the antennas of 2 Beechcraft King Air aircraft flying tandem orbits 24,000 feet above the valley. The Centra Spike multipath subtraction algorithm worked through that signal continuously for the entire 11 minutes. The fix box, originally 4 city blocks across, collapsed steadily. To 1 block, to half a block, to 12 houses, to 6, to 3, to a single building. By minute 9, the Centra Spike operator at the lead console, codename Robin, was looking at a single 8-meter resolution coordinate on his tactical map. He keyed his satellite uplink. He called the coordinate down to a Colombian search block colonel named Hugo Martinez, who was at that exact moment leading a heavily armed convoy through Medellin streets, 8 minutes out from the address. Martinez gave the order. The convoy turned onto the Los Olivos main street. Pablo Escobar, still on the phone with his family, happened to glance out of his upstairs office window. He saw the search block trucks at the end of the block. He understood instantly. He dropped the Motorola. He ran for the rooftop. He was 44 years old. He had less than 2 minutes to live. The exchange of fire on the Los Olivos rooftop lasted approximately 4 seconds. Pablo Escobar fired his pistol twice as he ran. He missed both times. The search block officers, in coordinated tactical fire, hit him 3 times. Once in the leg, once in the back, and once through the right ear. The 3rd shot was probably immediately fatal. Whether the shot through the ear was fired by a Colombian search block officer, or whether it was, as Escobar's family has claimed for decades since, a self-inflicted wound from his own pistol, that question has never been definitively settled. What is not in dispute is the operational chain that put Pablo Escobar in the position to be shot. For 4 years, the United States Army flew unmarked Beechcraft King Air turboprop aircraft in patient orbits over the city of Medellin, listening for the fragmentary radio signature of a single human being. The aircraft were one of 3 in a deeply classified Joint Special Operations Command Signals Intelligence Task Force. The operators were among the most highly trained airborne radio direction finding specialists in the United States military. The mathematics they ran, the method that the multipath subtraction algorithm that allowed them to extract a true signal from 3 false echoes against the wall of the Andes, was, in 1993, at the absolute frontier of real-time radio physics. For 4 years, those tools and that patience produced no usable result. Then, on a single afternoon in December, Pablo Escobar made a Father's Day call to his son. He stayed on the line for 11 continuous minutes. The Centra Spike algorithm had 8 minutes of continuous signal to work with. 8 minutes was enough. The Centra Spike operators handed a single 8-meter resolution coordinate down to a Colombian search block colonel named Hugo Martinez. Martinez and his men did the rest. Pablo Escobar, the man who had murdered 4,000 Colombians, ordered the bombing of an Avianca passenger jet, paid for the assassination of a sitting Colombian presidential candidate, and built one of the largest organized criminal enterprises in human history. Died on a red ceramic rooftop in a middle-class Medellin neighborhood, holding a Motorola brick phone, having just told his son he loved him. The Centra Spike methodology, patient airborne signal acquisition, multipath-aware triangulation, real-time data passing to ground forces, became the operational template for the next 30 years of American special mission high-value target hunts. Radovan Karadzic in Serbia, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad. Every one of those operations followed the architecture that was first proven in 1993 on a rooftop in Los Olivos. The hunters in the sky have never stopped flying. The lesson of Centra Spike is, in 2024, a lesson every adult in the developed world lives with, whether they understand it or not. Pablo Escobar's mistake was not that he made phone calls. Pablo Escobar's mistake was that he believed his radio signals were anonymous in the air. They were not. Any radio signal is a deterministic broadcast of the transmitter's location to anyone with the right receiver and the right antennas and the right multipath algorithm. There is no way around that physics. The very act of transmitting requires that you radiate energy outward in a sphere from your physical location at the speed of light. That energy can be detected. That energy can be triangulated. That energy can, with sufficient patience and computational power, be reduced to a coordinate on a map. Centra Spike proved that against the most heavily defended human target in the world in 1993. 30 years later, the descendants of Escobar's Motorola brick phone are in the pockets of approximately 5.5 billion human beings. Every smartphone is, by design, in continuous wireless contact with the cellular network around it. The phone identifies itself by a unique hardware identifier. The cellular network logs that identifier against the cell tower it is currently nearest to. The phone moves, the network logs the movement, hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second. The data is captured continuously. It is captured by the cellular carriers, which are required by law in most jurisdictions to retain the records for years. It is captured by mobile operating systems, which sell location histories to advertisers. It is captured, when of intelligence interest, by National Signals Intelligence Services, which have routine legal access to most of the cellular metadata in the world. Every phone in your pocket is a Centra Spike target waiting for someone to bother locating it. The architecture that hunted Pablo Escobar in 1993 has been industrialized, cheapened, and democratized. The same physics, the same math, the same fundamental insight that Robin and his crew, freezing in the back of a Beechcraft at 24,000 feet, understood operationally 3 decades ago. The signal is the location. The session is logged. The connection is closed. The files remain open. So here is the question for the next file. Which app on your phone right now do you trust most to not be selling your location feed? Drop it in the comments. The next file in the archive opens on whichever vendor the most viewers name.